Hi, everyone. This is Frank with Teaching University. And in this lecture today, we're going to be discussing how it is that we can control our thoughts, and more specifically, how we can really learn how to let go of self limiting beliefs and negative thoughts and emotions that have been holding us back. And I've learned through personal experience and what I've studied and read on personal development and neuroplasticity and so forth, that in order for us to transcend and overcome many of our limitations and overcome our circumstances, some of which may be challenging to us, is that we have to learn how to control our thoughts and control our own mind. Because let's face it, for many of us, and I've done this myself, that we simply react to the events that transpire, that occur in our lives. And when you consider that many of our behaviors and personality traits are totally unconscious, that where we're not even aware of them until after the fact, we're essentially running on autopilot, where instead we're not living life intentionally in terms of how we want to live it. So if we want to live life the way we want to, we have to begin to control our own thoughts and control the way we think, while also acknowledging that there are forces within us and outside of us that if we tap into and utilize, not through force, but through awareness and intention, we can see dramatic changes in our lives. So to quote Jeffrey M. Schwartz from his book, The Mind and the Brain, Neuroplasticity and the Power of Mental Force, he says there is no stronger influence on human values than man's belief about his relationship to the power that shapes the universe. When medieval science connected man directly to his creator, man saw himself as a child of the divine, imbued with a will free to choose between the good and evil. When the scientific revolution converted human beings from the sparks of divine creation into not particularly special cogs in a giant impersonal machine, it eroded any rational basis for the notion of responsibility for one's action. What struck me about this passage from The Mind and the Brain is how it seems like for many of us, we feel like we're part of this impersonal machine, where it seems like our modern day culture or society today makes us feel like we're constantly trying to catch up, that we're not particularly, or makes us feel that we're not particularly special. And I'm talking about really the constant negativity we see on social media, in the 24-hour news cycle, and so forth, where it makes us feel insignificant. But to overcome this, then, and to begin to harness the power of our minds, it's to acknowledge this divine intelligence, this universal intelligence, God, nature, energy, whatever terms you want to use, that is responsible for our universe and our world. And by acknowledging it, then, we individualize ourselves, and we can then begin to, to use this affirmation, be still, for I am God. We realize then that we have these powers within us that if we utilize, we can overcome, transcend, and improve various aspects of our lives. And this requires, of course, harnessing our inner speech, being able to improve how we communicate with ourselves and others. For many of us, I've done this, where we engage in negative self-talk. We convince ourselves that we're not good enough to have what it is that we desire. But by acknowledging this creator, this divine creator, this intelligence, we can harness the creative abilities within ourselves to create the life that we want. So Schwartz says that the life we lead, in other words, leaves its mark in the form of enduring changes in the complex circuitry of the brain footprints of the experiences we have had, the actions we have taken. This is neuroplasticity. The mechanisms of neuroplasticity account for cortical contributions to our idiosyncratic behavioral abilities, and an extension for the geniuses, the fools, and the idiot savants among us. In the field of neuroplasticity, we've learned that the brain can, in fact, change. For much of the 20th century, it was believed that after a certain age, the brain was pretty much fixed and it was unable to change. Or to put it another way, you were not able to improve or get rid of certain negative habits or thought patterns that perhaps were eroding your quality of life. We now learn that we can, in fact, change the brain. And we do this depending on what we impress on the brain, or more specifically on our subconscious, where many of our behaviors reside. So, what we choose to think about on a consistent basis, what we impress on the subconscious from the thoughts and images we entertain to the music and books we use, listen to, and read, the movies we watch, the social media that we indulge in, as innocent as it may seem, the content that we're indulging in can in fact have either a positive or a negative impact on how we think, and can in fact change and rewire our brains in a positive or negative way. So we must be much more mindful with the content that we expose ourselves to. This is very important. Listening to lectures like this, for example, can help you improve the way you think and help reveal to you new insights that maybe you've never recognized before. And by doing this, then life begins to reveal itself to you. New opportunities, new experiences begin to emerge. This has happened to me, especially as of late, when I began to let go and surrender and stop trying to force outcomes or trying to ban negative emotions. In fact, I would listen to them and realize that when we accept whatever it is that we're feeling, we no longer give energy to negative emotions. And thus, then we can begin to become our authentic self. We're removing these layers of self-limiting beliefs. And through self-awareness, by observing how we think and feel. And then there's the mind and the brain, which the mind is our ability to observe our brain and the way we think. We can begin to make profound changes. So Schwartz says then, because the observer's only freedom is the choice of which question to pose, shall I look up at the sky? It is here that the mind of the observer has a chance to affect the dynamics of the brain. An examination of the mathematics shows that the conscious intentions of a human being, reflected in the choices he makes about what question to put to nature, can influence the activities of his brain. Each conscious event picks out from the multitude of possibilities that comprise a quantum brain that's some ensemble that is compatible with a conscious experience. The physical event reduces the state of the brain to that branch of it that is compatible with a particular experience or observation. So, to condense this passage from Schwartz, he's basically saying that thoughts become things. That what we think about on a consistent basis, what we stay conscious of, what we impress in the subconscious mind, the subconscious or the higher self has to express itself in some way. So if we impress on our subconscious negative possibilities, ideas, visualizations, and outcomes, that's going to eventually manifest itself in some way in our physical environment to more negative circumstances and situations and events. And this is not to say that you're responsible for everything that happens in your life or bad things that happen, but it's about taking control and rethinking how it is that we perceive ourselves in the world, and that in fact we have much more control over what happens to us than we give ourselves credit for. So then it is important then that we become observers of how we think and how we behave. Our personality becomes our personal reality. So if we're seeing then our thought processes or certain ways of thinking are not producing the desired results that we would like, then we must observe them and they begin to pivot and make new decisions and make new choices. And making these new decisions and new choices and new ways of living can be a little bit uncomfortable. And throughout this entire process, when you begin to, say, set goals and begin to live life with new intentions of a better future, it can be a little bit uncomfortable at first because you may have doubt and you may have skepticism of this process. But that is perfectly normal. Embrace that skepticism. That is part of the process. The important thing is that we don't force this and we do this with less effort. And this is what Norman Deutsch says from his book, The Brain's Way of Healing. Reduce the effort whenever possible. The use of force is the opposite of awareness. Learning does not take place when we are straining. The principle should not be no pain, no gain. Rather, it should be of strain, no gain. But Anacreus thought the use of willpower, which he obviously had plenty, was not helpful in developing awareness. So this is the downside of willpower, where willpower, you're trying to force a specific habit or personality trait or outcome. But in fact, the more we use force, force negates. It pushes us away from what it is that we want. And one of the most profound changes that I've undergone was when I began to stop trying to consciously force an outcome, a way of thinking, etc. If I was feeling a certain way, whether good or bad, I accepted it. Even from negative emotions, if I had a day where maybe I was a little bit off, maybe I was feeling a little bit frustrated at work or something personal in my life, I accepted it. And by doing that, I noticed that I was no longer frustrated. I no longer got angry or anxious because I was surrendering and letting go and accepting whatever it is I was feeling. When we accept and let go, as David Hawkins suggests in his book, Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender, which we're going to be discussing later on in the lecture, we begin then to overcome these self-limiting beliefs that have been holding us back. And more importantly, we unleash this blocked energy that we've been suppressing for so long. And when we release this energy, it's almost like this feeling of relief, because finally we're no longer enslaved by these negative emotions and beliefs that have been holding us back. And it requires getting uncomfortable and acknowledging where it is that we are in our lives, whatever that may be. It's not about denial. That's one of the downsides or misconceptions about positive thinking, is that we essentially just think positively and ignore our whatever it is or problems that we're dealing with. And Carl Jung, in his work in The Shadow, he stresses the importance of using the shadow as a way of rebirth. So we must pay attention to the shadow and these negative emotions that we're experiencing without force and without judgment. So to quote Bob Proctor from his book, You Were Born Rich, he says that thoughts are things, and he's quoting Henry Van Dyke here. I hold it true that thoughts are things. They're endowed with bodies and breath and wings, and that we send them forth to fill the world with good results or ill. That which we call our secret thought speeds forth to earth's remotest spot, leaving its blessings or its woes like tracks behind it as it goes. We build our future thought by thought for good or ill, yet know it not, yet still the universe was wrought. Thought is another name for fate. Choose then thy destiny and wait, for love brings love and hate brings hate. What really struck me with this passage was thought is another name for fate. Choose then thy destiny and wait. Choose then thy destiny and wait. What does this mean? So what this passage is saying is, in the mental studio of our minds, we must choose what it is that we want to see brought forth in our lives, whether it's a specific relationship, a career, an ideal state, the way we want to be, the person we want to become, a material possession, the home that we want to live in, how we want to travel, the people that we want to meet, and so forth. Whatever it is that may be, choose what it is that you want in a relaxed state. Don't force it. And go about your day and wait. Because when you're waiting, and remember, keep in mind that life is not as linear as we like for it to be. But rather than that we're waiting, we are already living out what it is that we want. We have become the ideal person. So as Neville says, feeling is a secret. We are acting as if our prayers have already been answered. So then we just go about our lives, choosing the destiny that we desire, and walking in faith, knowing that it's just a matter of time before what we want is brought forth into our lives. Through new synchronicities, opportunities, experiences, new people that we meet, new business dealings, signs that we see throughout our day we may have never recognized before, that helps point to us that we're moving in the right direction. Again, we're not trying to force. We are becoming and creating the life that we want by living in the present moment. And by living in the present moment, we enter these states of flow where we surrender, we let go. And by doing so, then, that's when life really becomes magical. And then we have much more control over the way we think. Because as I said, force negates. So David R. Hawkins, in his book, Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender, he says that we have the opportunity to choose whether we want to hang on or let go of emotional upsets. We can look at the cost of hanging on to them. Do we want to pay the price? Are we willing to accept the feelings? We can look at the benefits of letting go of them. The choice we make will determine our future. What kind of a future do we want? Will we choose to be healed, or will we become one of the walking wounded? Any waking moment that we have, whether we're at work, we're at home, no matter where we are, we can take that opportunity to create. We can sit down, close our eyes for even just 5 minutes, and begin to envision what kind of future we want, what kind of life we want to live. And whatever negative feelings we are experiencing, we accept them. We accept them for what they are. Acceptance and surrender helps liberate us from these negative emotions. And once we liberate ourselves, once we're no longer in this fight or flight response, where we're always in a state of survival, we can then begin the process of creation and create whatever it is that we wish. We're not concerned about the future or living out the experiences of the past. We're in the present moment now. There is no tomorrow. There is no past. There's only right now. And in the present moment, in this state of flow where we're in the zone, where challenge meets skill, where we're thoroughly enjoying whatever it is that we're doing, because we are already who we want to be. We are already living out the life we want to live. Regardless of what's happening outside of us, that's when we really can harness and control the way we think. And that is true genius. Genius being that we're able to get things done and bring forth what it is that we desire without concerning ourselves with what is going on in our external environment. That is real genius. And you have that ability. We all do. But it requires self-awareness and work. This process is not easy. It is simple, but not easy. It does require some work and patience, having patience with yourself. But more importantly, loving yourself throughout this whole process, taking a deep breath, relaxing, and knowing that creation is already done. That life will reveal itself, what it is that you desire, that what you want has always been right in front of you the entire time. You just never recognize it because your perceptions have been clouded by your self-limiting beliefs and your poor self-image. So then to conclude, this is again from David R. Hawkins from Letting Go. He says that with courage, there is a willingness to take a chance and to let go of former securities. There is a willingness to grow and benefit from new experiences. This involves the capacity to admit mistakes without indulging in guilt and self-crimination. So this is about not judging yourself. Acknowledge your shortcomings and the problems that you have. We can't live in denial. We have to accept that perhaps we're dealing with something. We have to confront it head on. That is the only way we can liberate ourselves from it. We have to confront the shadow. And this can be scary because when we confront the shadow, we can discover these negative emotions, anger, even rage, fear, etc., that can be very uncomfortable to confront. But understand that every single person has a shadow, that this is normal, and that when we confront the shadow, we can actually use it for rebirth. So then our sense of self-worth is not diminished by looking at areas that need improvement. We are able to admit the presence of problems without being diminished. As a result, energy, time, and effort are put into self-improvement. On this level, statements of intention and purpose are much more powerful, and envisioned results tend to manifest. This is very important. When we work on self-growth, we don't judge ourselves and we acknowledge our problems. And I think this is the issue with, personal development and personal growth, and even studies in, say, neuroplasticity, or even in the fields of like the law of attraction, which has become very popular in discussing that the mistake I think that is made in discussing these topics is that we focus so much on positive thoughts and emotions. We don't realize that it is the negative emotions that are important, that we must listen to and accept and pay attention to, because that is the body giving us feedback, or your higher self giving you feedback as to what it is that you need or what you want. And when you do this and you focus then your energy and time and effort on self-improvement and live your life with intention through positive affirmations, consistently affirming and assuming the wish is fulfilled, then the envisioned results will tend to manifest. Suddenly, the things that you've always wanted all of a sudden begin to emerge in one way, shape, or form. Even if there's something that you wanted, they didn't necessarily come forth into your life, something else will emerge that is even better. So we are much more enterprising and creative because our energies are not drained by the constant preoccupation with emotional or physical survival. So by accepting negative emotions, We can control our thoughts and let go and stop preoccupying ourselves with these negative emotions and problems and issues. And then we can begin creating the life that we've always dreamed of because of greater flexibility. There's a willingness to examine issues with a view to changing overall meaning and context. There's a willingness to risk shifting paradigms. So Bob Proctor, his work on paradigm shifts, is that once we begin to acknowledge these creative energies within us, and by letting go of negative emotions and holding on to an idea of what it is that we want, we experience these paradigm shifts where, without force or effort, over time, doing the work, we begin to see then that life begins to change for us without much effort or strain because we're living in congruence. Whatever action we are taking is congruent with what it is that we want and desire. The mind and body are one. There's less strain because we're acting out on our instincts. What creates frustration and burnout is when we're taking action that is not aligned with what it is that we want. This doesn't mean we're never going to experience discomfort or even fear. When we take action in spite of the fear, we overcome the fear and anxiety. And we're no longer living in survival, we are creating. And by living in the ideal state now and assuming the wish fulfilled, and again, not trying to force, this is very important. You know why meditation, journaling, taking the time where we disconnect is crucial because we can go into the storehouse of our mind, the mental studio, and envision a new way of life, a new vision of a better future, and bring that into the present moment. And by doing so, we create a richness in our life that wasn't there before. And we unleash this energy where you feel euphoric and feel like anything is possible. And once that happens, then we'll never want to go back to our old way of thinking again. So thank you so much for listening to this lecture. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow me on YouTube as well as Spotify. Thanks for listening again. I appreciate you, me being a part of this journey. Take care.